Hello and welcome to the video. My name is Cam Ward and today we're going to be talking about the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K. Now, it's a terrible name, it doesn't fit in your pocket, and bad jokes aside, this is an incredible camera. So I'm going to be keeping this video as short and concise as possible. I know that I'm a little bit late to the party with the Blackmagic cameras. I'm going to be talking about this from someone who owned a RED Scarlet-W. I sold that and this camera kind of replaced that for me. The too long didn't watch version of this video is, if I was to pick a RED Scarlet-W or a Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera, now I picked the Blackmagic camera. Just a quick side note, I am currently in Dubai. I'm in my hotel room. I had a little bit of downtime today, so I wanted to take the time to talk about the camera. So first things first, I'm a director, cinematographer, editor. I do a little bit of everything. I love all of it. But basically I've shot a whole variety of different content over the past 10 years or so. From short films, music videos, fashion, weddings, events, music festivals, all that stuff really. And I've used a wide variety of different cameras over that time. And I'm saying this because a lot of YouTubers, I think, can get caught up in the tech specs of stuff and you never actually get to see much of their work or how they shoot. So in this video, I'm going to be showing you a lot of footage which I've captured from the Blackmagic camera over the past 3 months or so, and now felt like the right time to review this camera because I've kind of done a lot of different projects over the past 3 months. So I think the first thing I really want to get across in this review, which is important because I didn't really see much talk about it online, but this camera can be used as it is basically, as a run and gun setup. This is how I use it most of the time. A lot of YouTubers have it rigged up with bloody V-mount batteries on the back, monitors hanging off it, wires trailing off it, and that's just not the way I like to work. You know, there are cons to running it like this, but we'll get into that shortly. What you need to know is if you're a running gun shooter, it can be used rigged down like this. But if you want to rig it up for a cinema production or a commercial shoot, then go right ahead because that can be done as well. And I think for me, that was a tipping point which made me kind of pull the trigger on this camera, was the versatility of it. If you're watching this video as a videographer, I wouldn't recommend the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera. I don't think it's a versatile all-round tool. I think it's more of a specialist tool. And I don't mean that in like a pretentious way or anything. I think it's more for scenarios where you have control of the situation. At the end of the day, it is a cinema camera in the same way a RED is a cinema camera. If you're a videographer looking for the perfect camera, I'd say the A7S Mark III or the Canon R5 are probably your best bets. If you are starting out, a camera such as the Sony A7S Mark III will be such a good all-round tool for such a wide variety of different jobs. And I actually think the Blackmagic pocket cameras are great tools for people who already have a primary A-cam, which will cover them in many situations. This is an A-cam. Again, it's not going to cover you for every single job that comes through the door. So I think that's something to bear in mind. So let's get into the pros and cons of this camera. So I think the first thing that needs to be stated is the price point. I picked this camera up secondhand for £1,000 in the UK, but knew they're like 1,200, but they are quite hard to get hold of. But that price point is insane. The thing is, after coming from a RED Scarlet-W, I've been more than happy with the images coming out of this camera. I just think they're incredible. I really do. For the price point, it is insanity. I don't know how they've done it, but it's very, very impressive. Along with that, obviously you're getting RAW, you're getting the great color science, you're getting the great codec that comes with Blackmagic. Editing the files from this camera have just been like editing the R3D files from RED, which I love. They're very easy to work with, especially in Premiere Pro. The license for DaVinci had been used when I bought this camera, so I've not made the move over to DaVinci, but I am fully aware that I'd probably have a much better experience editing these files and grading them inside DaVinci Resolve. Also, key points which I know a lot of other people have mentioned, but the UI on the camera is fantastic. It's so easy to use, it's very smooth, especially compared to the RED. The RED felt often laggy and unresponsive, whereas Blackmagic, incredibly smooth, easy to work with, and pretty much anybody could pick up this camera and get going with it pretty quickly. Again, another key point for me is that it can be rigged up and it can be kept minimal. So again, it's very I'd almost say it's modular. You know, you can build it up or build it down however you want to, depending on the job. Well, one of the reasons I picked the 4K over the 6K is the frame rate options. Now, I don't need to shoot 6K resolution. I think it's a little bit overkill for the time being. But on the 4K, and I don't think you can do this on the 6K, is you can actually shoot 4K 75 frames per second in widescreen. And that is the frame rate I've been using a lot. I know 60 is great, but 75 I think just gives you that extra look, like it's just a little bit extra. The Micro Four Thirds sensor, you know what? This was a pretty big deal for me. I wasn't sure if I was gonna like that or find it hard to adjust to, coming from full frame on the A7S Mark II and Super 35 on the RED. But I put the Metabone Speed Booster XL on, and I've not really found any issue with the crop factors. And also, one of the things that I was actually pretty concerned about really was the 120 frames per second mode on this camera cropped into the Micro Four Thirds sensor. I wasn't sure what the image quality would look like, if it was going to be pretty bad, but at the end of the day, you're recording 120 frames per second at 2.7K, and the footage you're seeing now is 2.7K, 120 frames per second footage scaled up to 4K. And I think it looks beautiful. I think it looks really sharp. There's not that much loss in detail that I can see. Bear in mind YouTube compression as well. But yeah, I think the footage out of this camera has been amazing. I really don't have many issues with it at all, to be honest. It would be great to get a full sensor readout at 75 frames per second, but you can do that at 60 frames per second. So it is what it is, you know. You can't complain too much about a camera at this price point. Being a Micro Four Thirds sensor, you can get some fun mounts and you can adapt more lenses. I wanted to get a little bit different and try something else, so I got the Lauer 9mm lens, and I bloody love this lens. It's been amazing. It's been a lot of fun to shoot with, but it's something I probably wouldn't have tried had I not picked up this camera. Let's get into the cons, and I'm just looking at my notes and there seems to be quite a lot, but you know what, there really isn't. It's all stuff you can work around. Battery life. Contrary to what people say online, I've had a good experience with this camera, so well-ish. Batteries last for about 40 minutes. Coming from other cinema cameras using V-Lock batteries, like on my RED I'd use slimline V-Lock batteries, I would only get half an hour to 40 minutes anyway, so I'm kind of used to having poor battery life on a cinema camera. If you do want to get around that, then you can get the battery grip. And I know it bulks it up a bit more, but I believe you can get about 1 to 2 hours of battery life with the battery grip, and you've still got the minimal form factor, so it's not the end of the world. Like, the battery's not that bad, and they use the LP6 batteries. I have tons of those. They're very cheap to get. I'll probably only go through 3 or 4 batteries tops, and I'll always have them charging in the background anyway. So I think it's bad, but it's not that bad. Form factor, it is a big chunk of plastic, not great, but again, can't argue with that given the price point. Ergonomically, it's very good. These little flappy doors, you've heard people talk about them before, I'm sure. Yeah, they're just rubbish. So just one more thing before we wrap up. The actual screen is such an incredible screen. I love this. I love having such a big screen built in to the camera. You've got your focus peak and you've got your LUTs. It's very easy to work with and it's very clean. It makes it easy to compose shots. I will say that probably my biggest gripe about this camera is that it doesn't flip or tilt. If I'm in a situation where I know I'll be needing to get in a variety of positions and I've got it on a gimbal, then I will use a small HD 502 monitor. Now let's talk about low light. I've pushed it to about 3200 ISO. I probably wouldn't push it much further than that. Perfectly fine for me. I normally keep the A7S Mark II in my bag anyway. It's the camera I'm recording this video on, and that's got me covered for all situations. You know, if I do need to push it any higher than that, which again comes back to the point of having an all-rounder camera in your bag if you are going to be working in a whole variety of different situations. Found the Pocket 6K and the Pocket 4K, they kind of cost the same amount of money when you factor in the speed booster. So if you don't need to shoot 6K, I would really just recommend the 4K. I haven't used the 6K, but based off the image quality so far, it's been amazing. So I've got no complaints, and having those extra frame rate options. Also storage wise, you are going to burn through storage with this camera if you're shooting in RAW. Generally, I'm shooting between 3:1 and 8:1 compression, which is all the footage you're seeing. You are going to burn through storage, so that's something to bear in mind, and that's probably another reason not to go for the 6K over the 4K. Something I would love to see in the next version of this camera is actually an RF mount. Having RF would just allow you to adapt a ton of different lenses to this thing and use some of the more modern Canon lenses. The 2470 is one of my favorite lenses, and the RF version has image stabilization built in. So that would borderline negate the fact that this thing doesn't have IBIS. But basically IBIS and an RF mount in the next version of this camera would be fantastic. Whether it's 4 or 6K, I don't really care. 4K is plenty for me. So overall, what do I think? Well, I love the camera. As mentioned, if I had to pick it between that and my old RED camera, I'd pick the Blackmagic for its smaller form factor. Image quality out of it is incredible. I absolutely love it. Using the raw files, the playback is amazing inside Premiere. It does crash every so often inside Premiere, but that's a Premiere issue. Well, it probably is anyway, given Premiere Pro. I think I am going to be upgrading to the RED Komodo. So this has been a nice little stopgap for me. Having not used the RED Komodo yet, I can't say if it's better or worse than this camera. I'm sure the images out of it are better. But if you're on the lower end of the budget or you've been curious to try this camera out, I couldn't recommend it enough. It really is incredible. I would have loved to have had this thing 10 years ago when I was starting out. But at the same time, I don't think I would have known how to utilize it and get the most out of it. At the same time, maybe 5 years ago, I was doing a whole variety of different content and I needed more of an all-rounder camera. It's certainly not a budget cinema camera either. Again, coming from a RED, I've had no complaints about the image quality out of the Blackmagic. I can't say enough good things about this camera. It really is superb. So yeah, thank you very much for watching this video. My name is Cam Ward, and if you've got any questions, drop me a comment below or follow me on Instagram at CamWardFilm. I post more behind the scenes content and other bits and bobs that I'm up to over there. But yeah, if you've made it this far, please be sure to subscribe because plenty of other videos like this coming soon. So yeah, I'll catch you in the next one.